to the Perfect Blend broadcast. We're so glad you can tune in. We had a couple of technical difficulties, and we know that you guys are still there. We got a great program lined up. Tonight we're going to be talking about partnerships and relationships. I'm your host, D. Ray, along with my lovely co-host. You got a microphone. we have some awesome guests here tonight. Before we get started, I want them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves and why they are here. Start from my far right.
Hello, everyone. I am Miles Harris. I go by Miles the Millennial. I am a motivational speaker and best-selling author. I'm also in one half of the Let's Talk Like Men podcast, which we have grown to over 35,000 followers this year, and excited to be here today to speak to you guys.
Good evening, people. My name is Rex Howard Jr. I am a relationship and sex therapist, also person development coach. I am the second half of the Let's Talk Like Men podcast, and I'm super excited to be here just to add value to the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Brown. I am a communication strategist and the founder of The Gifted Collective, a communications firm that specializes in helping athletes and creatives use their platforms for good. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Darnita Samuels. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also the owner of Agape Healing and Wellness Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Houston, Texas.
And I am Tiki. I am the co-host of The Perfect Blend, and also I am a loan officer.
All right. Well, let's get started. We want to talk about partnerships and relationships. Let's first, you want to define what we're talking about when we talk about partnerships? Okay. Anybody want to start off defining it, what you think partnerships are and what it looks like?
Yeah, for me, when I think of a partnership, I think of an agreement, right? I think of two people or more that have come together and state a common goal that they have and the roles and responsibilities that they each will play within that goal. I think of a team. I think of a unit that understands that two can do more than one can do. That's how I define a partnership. And I think partnerships are crucial to any level of success that you're trying to reach when it comes to any goal that you have in life.
When I think about it, I think about two individuals trying to serve one another, looking for different ways to serve, looking for ways to be less selfless, less selfish and more selfless, and trying to come together to build on a common goal.
All right, down at that end, anybody want to comment on that and what's your definition of how you see partnerships, and then we're going to jump right into this thing.
I agree with everything that was stated, but I will also add that these are two people who come together, who see each other and know each other, and challenge each other on the unhealthy parts and also to grow in other areas as well.
No comment?
I mean, everyone said pretty much what I would say, but I think additionally, a partnership is only as good as the two partners, and so it is an opportunity for people to come together and be able to maximize each other's strengths in order to work towards a common goal.
You said a mouthful. Two people come together in order to maximize each other's strength. You know, I really got really interested in this partnership and relationships when I went to visit my daughter in Baltimore, Maryland. Her and I were having some good conversations around this. And some of the things that her and I discussed is one thing I had actually confused it as if she just wanted a partnership. But she said, no, Dad, I want an actual relationship. She said, I want to be in a romantic relationship. But in partnership, as you just said, Andrea, people come together and with their strengths. And so partnerships, you have to talk about them. But I think more or less when you get into that relationship, your strength, we should defer to the person's strength in particular areas. Let's talk a little bit about that. How does that look in a relationship? You know, you have a person who is strong in a financial background or strong in communication and strong in another area. How does that work in a partnership relationship?
In the highest good, it works very well, because the thing is, it takes another person putting themselves sometimes in their ego to the side to say, okay, this person does this better. It's okay. Let them shine. Let them go through the process. Let them do what they need to do so we can all benefit on the end. Conversely, when it's their turn, if something else is a strength for that other person, then handle it. Do what they have to do. And so as they're growing, as they're achieving their goals, as they are moving forward in whatever the partnership is, the strength will be shown, and they should always be amplified, acknowledged, validated, and encouraged as well. And sometimes challenge each other to develop other strengths, because in that whole process, you'll see other opportunities where strengths either are not there or they are very small, but they can grow.
Yeah, she hit the nail on the head. To me, I think the key is for us to redefine and understand what real leadership looks like. Because the best leaders understand when they need to defer to someone else, right? Too many times we think, whether that's men or whoever, when you're so used to leading or believe that your role is to be the final say-so and make the final determination in any circumstance, you believe that, well, even if I don't know the answer, I got to pick something and do something anyway, and I'm not going to consult anybody else in this. And what you should do instead is say, hey, I know I don't have all the answers. I know that this is an area where I'm not as strong in. Let me get input from other people. Let me let this person know, like, look, this is completely in your wheelhouse because I know you understand this like the back of your hand. It's kind of like if you married to an attorney and some legal documentation falls on your house and you're trying to interpret it yourself. You really need to defer that to the person who has the expertise. So successful companies have people. They have chief marketing officers, chief HR officers. They have all these different people leading in different roles for a reason, because it helps empower the collective to make the wisest decision. So I think that's the biggest part.
No, I think that's 100% accurate. When I think about this, when I think about a leader, I always like to think about a coach, right? A coach is going to put you in the right position based on your skill set in order for the goal of the greater community, or in this case or that case, it would be a team, to win. So if you are a point guard, I'm not going to put you in the post to try to post someone up and score a basket. No, you're going to facilitate the play. Again, a leader is someone who has the ability to see what is on their team and put people in the right positions in order for the greater good or the greater goal to be achieved. And that's how I always think about being a leader in any space, but particularly in relationships. Being a leader doesn't mean that I have to do everything. Being a leader really, truly means, how can I ensure that I'm serving the people that I'm leading and putting people in the position in order for them to be successful?
One thing, especially for my generation, we talk about traditional role models and things of that nature. And what's really interesting, there were times when there were traditional role models, and they worked. They absolutely worked. But now that you fast forward, when society started growing and women start working outside of the homes, I think that redefined automatically what traditional roles look like. So now you have the wife working outside of the home, and just say if you have a couple of children. So again, and when we're talking about partnerships, we're talking about not only bringing your strengths to the table, but also, also recognizing the point at which that person that you're in a relationship with needs that assistance. For instance, I told my wife, I said, because you had our children, you never have to wake up at night to take care of them. Whenever my children cried, I got up and took care of them because she worked just like I did, and she had the babies. Which ladies that you're the I think are you a mom? Auntie mom. Pardon me.
I'm an auntie mom.
Auntie mom. Okay. Well, Taki is the only mother I'm sorry. Tiki is the only mother. Just let it, you seen that Tony the Tiger commercial when you're supposed to be in the dark. I'm sorry about that. But so she knows what it takes to birth a child. And when you do that, I mean, that's stress on the body. So again, partnership is saying, you know what, I got you. Stay in the bed, I'll get up and take care of this. Especially when you're not breastfeeding.
I have a question. For me, I've had challenges with that. Like Darnita said, ego. There are a lot of men out here with egos, and they do not know how to lead. So how do you actually start that conversation to say, hey, you're not that strong? You know, is it okay if I can handle this? How do you actually start that conversation? I mean, I'm just asking.
Um, what perspective are you speaking from?
Okay, take for instance, I was engaged and we had a trucking company, and he could handle the drivers, which was fine. I'm in finance, so I know everything there is, basically the admin side and handling the finances and everything of that nature. But for some reason, he wanted to jump in when it came to the financial part. When I had everything together, paperwork, all that stuff was together, and I said, hey, you're the truck driver. Go ahead and worry about the truckers. I got everything else. Right. But he just had to put his hand in everything. And so that basically ruined the company. So how do you start that conversation?
I think it starts in the planning process, right? Especially when it comes to business. You think about people just don't jump into business or start an LLC and then they just start making money. No, you have the idea. And then you have a game plan, and then you put those things in action. Then you have certain things that go in order. And then if you have a business partner, you say, these are your responsibilities, these are my responsibilities. Like, for example, Miles and I'm a relationships person, and he's a documentation person. Miles is going to take care of paperwork, the back end, and everything is going to get pushed out perfectly. But when it comes to responding to DMs or maybe responding to comments, that's going to be my spot that I'm going to flourish in. We have that understanding. Right, but if there's no understanding and we just are operating off expectations without agreements, then that's where things go left. So if the expectation is, oh, since I'm good with money, I should be taking over the money, but we didn't agree that I'm going to be taking over money, now money is a part of it, you can't operate in your gift simply because he won't allow you.
But the thing is, it was actually defined how things were going to happen. And every time there was an issue, it was always a question here, a question there, and I'm like, I got this. Because every time, every week we were missing loads. So it was like they weren't keeping track, the company wasn't. But I had every load, and I told them, I said, don't worry about it. I said, I got documentation for everything, and so they had to pay us for those loads because I could prove that they had missed them. Right. But he still, for some reason, just would not relinquish that part to me.
So I'm going to say something. I know Miles had something he wanted to say real quick. That sounded like me when I was starting my business, right? When I was doing RexFit, I was doing everything on my own. I could trust myself. Even if I failed, I could still trust myself. And then my dad told me, son, you need a team, right? But for some odd reason, me giving up my control of everything didn't feel right for me. I wanted my hands to be on every single part of it. So that's when you start dealing with people that have trust issues. I had trust issues that if I put this in your hands, if you drop the ball, it's going to hurt a lot harder than if I did it myself. So I think that could be a major thing that dealt with that. And I know Miles said something.
But hold on, wait.
Okay.
So how did you overcome that?
I overcame it by first going to God and asking him to give me more guidance and direction, then also to put people in my life that I could trust. Put people in my life that showed me that if I gave them something, they could do something productive with it. So I remember the first time I did that, there was a young lady that was part of my team. She was like, Rex, you've been handling so much. Let me take something off your plate. And it was like, it felt kind of weird doing that. But when I gave it to her and she was able to handle it, and she handled it well, and then she took over more roles, I realized how much peace I had because I had more time to focus on other things, and she had that on lock. So it's really going to God and saying, listen, this is the issue that I have. Let me go to the root of why I have these issues, and then beyond that, ask God to put people in your life that you can trust and that show that they have fruit in their patterns.
Yeah, and just from a speaking on the male ego, because it's a lot of ego, I can tell, was involved in that. You have two options in my eyes. One, you can avoid men that have that in the first place, right? And of course, if you're already in a relationship with them, that gets tricky because sometimes you don't see it per se. But what I would say is if you're trying to make it work, right? Which I, know in that situation, you guys are trying to make this thing work, and you're trying to figure out how the best way to navigate it. This will trigger a lot of women because they'll get kind of jerked when I say this, but the male, I don't want to say you can manipulate, but what I am going to say is men, we're like babies when it comes to men with a lot of ego. If you pat us on our head, or like dogs, you pat us on our head and feed us a little bone, we'll be okay with the rest of it. And I think what happens is sometimes if you come off and you say, well, you don't know what you're doing, right? The second you say that to us, it triggers us to be, I do know what I'm doing. Now I got to prove it to you that I know what I'm doing, and trying to step up in a way when it comes to the finances, right? Even though you clearly have the expertise, you have to kind of, anytime you're dealing with somebody that has a fragile ego in a certain area and you're trying to develop them to get out of that space, is never going to work with head-on-head action and energy. If you're meeting them without meeting them where they're at, right? If they're fragile in their ego, you have to talk to them fragile, right? You have to approach them in a very gentle way and say, hey, the things that you do so well is because of this, that, and that. And I love the fact that you want to be involved in this area. What would make you feel valued when it comes to the finances, to feel like your input is valued here, right? And when you say that to that person, now, one, it forces them to ask themselves, do I even really have something that I want to have valued in this? Because sometimes they just wanted to feel like you cared about them and that they were important. Other times, they can sit there and say, well, the big thing for me is I trust you in what you're doing. It's just I want to make sure I see it for my own eyes before it gets sent out. So I know everything is lining up. You can explain it to me. If you could just run down these numbers to me so that I know and understand everything that you got going on and how you're doing it. I don't want somebody running it, and let's say, you're not here. I can't manage the finances at all. Teach me, right? And that's their way of trying to know and say they don't know, is by being controlling. So I think if somebody's fragile in the area, you have to approach them with gentleness, or else it's like a glass. If you hit a glass directly, it's going to break.
All right, I'm gonna say a couple of things, and that, man, just spot on. Everybody's just spot on. I think that in the case, and just just being honest and not being, I think he was just so insecure that he couldn't accept the fact that she can handle it, and that's one of those things that she shouldn't have to babysit his insecurity. In other words, and the other thing I like what you said, Rex. These are things that need to be discussed up front. Okay, this is, for instance, what my daughter said, and she said, Dad, she said, now that whenever I enter into a relationship, a really deep relationship, she said, I stayed up front what I bring to the table and what my expectations are as a partner, and the romantic side of it as well. And she said, so that way there will be no misunderstanding. She gave me a scenario, and she said this guy just repeatedly did something throughout the night, through the date. And at the end of the day, she basically said, well, we're not going to go any further with this because, again, I laid out my expectations, but yet, so, again, we as men, and I want to say, because I thought you were going to touch on this, and I heard a talk show host say this. I'm not going to call his name. I quit watching him. But he said men are so sometimes we're so dumb that you got to make us think that we came up with the idea. And which is that's an ignorant way to look at people. Men were created to be leaders. We have leadership qualities, capabilities. But if we fail to develop them, that shouldn't fall on the female. That's our responsibility. So no, and she said something to me the other day about one of the programs that she came up with, which was domestic violence, right? You came up with the domestic, okay. She says, are you giving me the credit? Are you giving me the credit? And she kept saying it, and I was playing with her. But in all honesty, yeah, I gave her the credit because she came up with the idea. So I didn't have to make her think that she came up with it. No, she came up with the idea. So again, when we lay things out on the table, bridging gaps. Okay, bridging gaps. Well, pick up the microphone and say, what was it? Come on.
It was bridging gaps with law enforcement.
Okay, that's what it was. Bridging gap.
You gonna tell the whole story though?
Go ahead, tell it. You can tell it.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't know your side of the whole story.
Okay, well, you said that you were talking to one of our guests, and he gave you the kudos, saying, this is a wonderful topic to talk about, and that you were doing big things and great things, and he was very proud of you. And in that instance, I would have expected you to say, well, I didn't come up with the idea, but I kind of felt like you kind of took the credit for it at that point. So when you told me about that, I was just like, wow, okay. So
Okay, that's true. But but in the business of the day, I didn't think to say, you know what, but I broadcasted on the radio program. I broadcasted. I said it was her idea. So again, even that night, the night that we did it, I talked a lot about it too. So, but again, in partnerships, we come to the table and we understand what we bring. So, anybody else?
I was just going to comment on the idea of communicating. So the only way that any of this works is if the people in the relationship have the emotional intelligence and the skill to be able to communicate what they need effectively, right? So the idea of being able to create a space where a man feels safe enough to be able to share his weakness is important, but I also think it's very, very important for men to be able to do the work that they need to do in order to be the kind of leader that they need to be in a relationship. So it is very, very important to be able to, one, know how to communicate effectively in all different relationships, in all different times. So I know that if I approach someone who's fragile, regardless of if it is a man or a woman, there is a certain way that I'm going to approach the situation. But I know that as someone who has, one, studied communication but communicates with people frequently, I'm not going to just come into a situation and say, you are terrible at this. I'm never going to do that, because one thing that I know is that when you approach someone with negativity, you'll probably receive that negativity back. And so it is important for women to know, yes, approach it with delicacy. You should be delicate in your approach when you're expressing something that could cause a disruption in a man's ego. But also, men have to know and understand that they can't be so ego heavy that they cannot receive criticism.
You just hit exactly what I was about to say, because I was going to push back a little bit, Pastor, because the thing that I have to say is this. It's easy for us to say, all right, cool, men got to lead and men got to not be insecure. But the reality is everybody's insecure at some point in their life about something or many some things. And in order to get to a place to where you're not insecure about it, it takes somebody, typically an opposing force or exposure to something different, or somebody that pours into you to either teach you better, love you better, to really put you in an atmosphere to where you can say, okay, I don't have to be this way anymore. This was a defense mechanism that I built up because growing up as a young boy, I had to take care of my mom, my dad, everybody on my own. And so I never knew how to relinquish control to anybody. Every time I was growing up, I'm socialized that a man has to be the one that does everything. He runs everything in the house. And so you don't know what partnership looks like if you've never seen anything healthy. And so it's a lot easier for us to say, well, men got to do this, but men don't know how to do it. There are so many men that are lost. We just came from an event earlier today where it was about 20, 30 men there, and we're sitting there talking about our experiences, and we had everybody from the age of 16 to the age of 62, 63, all different walks of life, all different upbringings. And the common thing amongst everybody is that, like, we're all vulnerable in different areas, and it truly takes a place where you feel safe and other men can come around and help you and meet you where you're at in order for you to get to where you need to go. And I just wanted to put that out there, because I'm not saying we should, quote unquote, women should baby your insecurities, but partners have to deal with your insecurities. And they're going to be present when you get into a relationship with them. You're never going to get to a point in life where you're insecure about nothing. And I would much rather have a partner that sees, like, okay, he's being insecure about something right now. Meeting this person with head-on force is only going to make it harder. Meeting them with love and meeting them with a certain type of approach allows this person to get to a state to where we can have an actual conversation about what they're feeling, so they can work through it on the back end. And that is a requirement that I think partners have, women and men, to do that for each other.
Can I jump in real quick? Because
No, you don't have to be in a hurry. Talk. Go ahead.
Miles, I like what you said, but I'm going to push back just a little bit, because when you're talking about that safe space, some men don't feel safe with other men. It is a woman. And think about it like in a therapy room. I work with so many black men, and I'm sitting there like, why'd you pick me? And they're like, I said, I thought you would want to look for a black male because, let's be very clear. Black male therapists are almost like unicorns. More are coming into the field, right? So when you find one and their quality, then you're like, oh, I'm going to hold on to you for dear life, and I want to make referrals. But as I'm asking, people are specifically saying, I feel safer with a woman. Absolutely. Now, I do agree when we're talking about the communication, you don't go dead end. I mean, unless that's the type of communication the person gets. You get what I'm saying? But then also, even if you are delivering it softly, for a person who is not open to any type of feedback, you can still get a bear. So the person has to be mature enough to be able to be in the process of the transformation and the growth that they need to do. Sometimes, and I'll say it like this, Takia, and I don't know, you were in partnership and relationship with this person. You were in relationship first or partnership first? Did he not have a fragile ego before?
Did he?
Yeah. Did he have a fragile ego before?
He did.
Right. So you know what you're getting into when you go into different things, because the people will show you who they are up front. If you pay attention, and I will say this, and I stand on this all the time, people will tell you exactly who they are. Now, it's up to you to listen and actually take it for what it is, because, and I'm a woman, I speak for woman conversations sometimes. I've had conversations with people I know who are other women and other friends and things like that, and they're like, but he said this, but this is what he meant. No, that's not what he meant. What he said is what he said. So if you're not paying attention and then you're thinking you're romanticizing it, then you have to come off the fairy tale sometimes, get into reality, see it for what it is, and then make the choice and decision, because every time it's a choice and decision. Can I deal with it? Can I not? And even with talking about the ego and everything else, I agree. Many people have insecurities on both sides, male and female, right? Are our insecurities clashing against each other? Then how do we have that truthful and transparent conversation to say, listen, I noticed this about myself, but I've also noticed this about you. How do we work on this together? Partnership.
Right. And the thing, I'm glad you brought that up. And again, let me say this. I love pushback. So again, we're talking about, because you got to understand, there's an age difference at this. I may not look as old as y'all. I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, so I was going to say something, but I'm going to leave it alone. But the point of the matter is, that's why we have to have talk over different perspectives, right? And you explained it perfectly what I was talking about. When I say we cannot babysit each other's insecurities, that means we have to position ourselves to one. Like she said, we got to make a decision either to get out of it or to help them grow. For instance, I have seen mothers still breastfeeding kids who should probably have a job. It's like, look, they look like Baby Huey. They hanging all out the stroller. Come on. Or, you are catering to somebody's idiosyncrasy because they have not put forth the effort to grow out of it. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My dad gave me some advice that I never would pass on to my children. Yet, I didn't stay in that condition. What I did do, however, I started reading and studying and saying to myself, I'm not going to be like my dad was. I'm not going to be like the men that I grew up around and the examples that I had, and they were doing all types of things. I want to make sure that my wife, my kids are secure spiritually, financially, and all the above. So that's what I meant by that. So you explained it actually perfectly. Again, every single person does have idiosyncrasies or weaknesses. But when you start talking about a partnership, let's talk about how do we make each other better? How do we come together? Now, we got some fears, we got some insecurities, and I like, who said that earlier? Who said that? That don't go in there talking about, this is what's wrong with you. Let me help you out. Let me that was you said that, Andrew. See, you can't even see how you acted right now, but let me help you out. Okay, right. We're about to shut this whole movie down right now because you're not going to get anywhere. So when we're referring to partnership, we got to come to the table face to face and say, okay, I have weaknesses, you have weaknesses. Are we going to destroy each other with those weaknesses? No, we're going to help each other grow. One thing I told Takia, because her background in finances is real strong, and whoever, and I say this for the panel and for people who are watching us, don't use your strength as a weapon against your partner. Use your strength as a strength to bring that relationship better. Because if you're better at something than I am, then you look at me, oh, here we go again. That's why your whole family broke, because you don't know how to handle finance. You know, now you're creating a whole. I mean, that goes both ways, whether it's a male or female. Men, our words are so powerful that we can hurt our women inwardly, and then they start responding to it. What's wrong with you? Why don't you, why don't you want to interact with me? Well, because you always saying these negative things to me. I want to say this because I thought this was funny, too. For some reason, whenever we do this panel with these two guys, they always sit to my right, and the women always sit to her left. We don't plan this. So we're not at odds against each other.
What did you say when you first came in, Rex? We segregated.
I just thought about that, but I just want to say we got an awesome panel here. You listen to the Perfect Blend broadcast. I'm the host, D-Ray, along with my co-host, Tiki. Listen, we do a radio program every first and third Wednesday of the month on High Vibe Music Radio. You can tune into that, and we're actually going to change our format. We're going to start going to more of our podcasts because we noticed that not only the interaction is greater, but the viewership is greater as well, stronger as well. All right, we're talking about partnerships and relationships. Let's keep talking that same vein because, we've got some good stuff going right now.
Okay, one thing I want to mention, and I'll say this every single time I hop on this show when it comes to relationships. A good relationship, partnership, multiplies your strengths and it divides your weaknesses.
You said that on the radio program. Say that again.
Yeah. So a good relationship, partnership, it multiplies your strengths and it divides your weaknesses. But a bad relationship multiplies your weaknesses and divides your strengths. So it's like, I can't use my strengths against you because that's not going to work. I'm going to use my strengths to bring you up. I'm going to use my strength to pour into you. For example, with me and my fiance now, coming into this relationship, I'm an avid reader, right? I read a lot of books on personal development. And I noticed that reading wasn't really the thing that she wanted to do a lot of. And I was totally fine. I'm never going to force you to do anything that you don't want to do, right? So all I did was continue reading. Now, when she started asking me questions, and she was like, you have a lot of knowledge on a lot of different things. And she was like, where did that come from? I said, well, 1, life experiences, and 2, the books that I read. And she said, well, can you share one of those with me? And I'll be more than happy to. So now every time I maybe go overboard, but now every time I buy her,
you got a book of the year club, week club.
Yeah. Every time I buy her a gift, whether it's a birthday, whether it's a holiday, I include a book in it. And our conversations have elevated simply because she was like, those books that you've given me made me think on a different level. It made me see myself on a different level, and it adds more value to the conversations I have with my friends. And that right there is multiplying your strengths and dividing those weaknesses.
Let me ask you a question. Knowing y'all, and let me say, man, these young men are my heart. These y'all my dudes, man. I love them. One thing I noticed y'all been following the brother on TikTok. I finally learned how. I seen a little head come up. I said, oh, this working. But I want to say this about both of you guys, but I'm going to say particularly about you. I guarantee you just don't buy any book for her.
Right. No.
You have read her, you know her, and say this book will draw out of her. Now, here's what the Lord told me years ago when I was talking about marriage and we're doing marriage seminars. He said a man can never reap where he has never sown and cultivated. He can. So in a relationship with this woman, you can never get out of that relationship what you have not planted, watered, and cultivated. So in order for us as men to be successful in our relationships, we got to first study the woman that we're in a relationship with, not to manipulate her, but what course of action is best to bring out the queen in her? What course of action is best to bring out the best in her? And sometimes that literally looks like we got to die to self on a lot of things. Yes. We got to go ahead, jump on in. Because you waving like a black woman, girl.
I am a black woman.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
I am. You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead, girl.
No, I'm so glad that you said that because, and I'm thinking like, my thing is if you ever want to know the quality of your relationships, look at the relationship that you have with God first.
Right,
How do you treat God in your own life, right? Because if you are that type of person where you think God is a genie and not a gentleman, and he doesn't give you magically what you want and everything else after that one prayer and everything else, and you be like, oh, screw you, I'm going to go out here and do my own thing, then guess what? That's how your relationships are going to be. And so when you are talking about, and Andre, you hit on this like real quick, and I thought you was going to really go in on it. So when you're talking about being a leader, the first thing as a leader you should always do is be a servant. Because many people be like, oh, I'm just calling all the shots, and you just do exactly what I do. If you ever get into a leadership role, then that is the most humbling and sometimes the most humiliating role that you'll ever have. And you'll be wondering, like, every night, why did I do it, right? And again, if we're thinking about the servant, Christ came to serve. He came to save, he came to serve. He said, I came for the sick, not the well. Right? And so when we're doing that and we're sitting there talking about it and everything else, and then we're talking about relationships, right? So, and I feel like the Bible does have a check and a balance. For anything that's said, there's a check and a balance for each one, right? So when we start talking about with relationship and they say, well, they say, wives submit to your husbands and everything else. Here's the piece that people leave off a lot. Husbands, love your wife like like Christ loved the church. Do you understand what that is? Because if I was God, some days I'd be like, get rid of all of them. Get rid of all of them. That means every time the person messes up, every time somebody cusses somebody out, every time somebody tries to really and intentionally hurt, and everything else, all those things, you keep forgiving, you love them, you just love them in spite of them. Now, I'm not telling you be the doormat. I'm not saying that. But if you're going to love somebody like Christ loved the church, that's a great amount of love that you have as an edict when you take on that role. And then you become that servant. So what it really is in a partnership is serving each other. Even when at times it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel good because, again, we're people. We get hurt, we get angry, we get dismayed, we get triggered, we have insecurities, we have to fight our flesh all the time. And one person told me, my cousin, when he got married, the person who did his premarital counseling was like, are you ready to die daily?
Absolutely.
And that was the thing, because you got to kill your flesh every day.
You have to be able to die to yourself. That's true. You know what? They said that when you yoke two oxen together, or like the largest horse, like a Clydesdale and some other horse, individually those horses can pull right around 1,600 pounds. But then when you put them together, they almost quadruple what they can pull. Isn't that crazy? I mean, not because it seemed like it was just double, but no, because now they got all of their strength, and I bet you those animals are inspiring each other. Whether we don't know that, but I'm sure it is. I have a quote for you. I know y'all like for me to give y'all quotes. Y'all watch this, and this is what you just said. What made me think about this quote the Lord gave me. If you are too big to follow, then you are too small to lead. Mm-hmm. If you are too big to follow somebody, then you are too small to lead. You ready for this? The head of Christ is God. The head of every man is Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. If I can't follow Jesus Christ, how can I expect my woman or my wife to follow me? Because my submission to Christ activates her submission to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said that, because even going back to the oxen or the Clydesdales you were talking about.
Yeah, the Clydesdale, yeah.
Because all I kept thinking about was Ecclesiastes when they started talking about the
Absolutely.
three-strand cord. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, exactly. You know what I'm saying? Because when it's that tight, it takes a lot of other things that, when it's that succinct, when it's that clear, when it's that tight, they can face a lot of challenges. But guess what? Even if one comes, they still got the strength of the other two.
Absolutely.
Right? But if we only got one, good luck on it.
And also, let's finish that scripture out. It says, how can one warm himself alone? So it's again, the principle of partnership is, and I think what we have done is that we've diluted it so much because of our individual lives. And like you said, Rex, I want to do this myself, that we actually think that submitting to one another is a weakness. But it's actually, as you said, it multiplies our strengths. And it divides our weaknesses. So again, now let's keep that. But I'm gonna put a thought out, because I want to come back to this thought I'm gonna put out. So I want to talk about final decision making too, because that's sometimes it can throw people on a tizzy in a partnership. So let's come back to that a little bit later. But let's keep on going. What you said? You said, Pastor, you be hitting some good stuff. We're going to go back to that in just a second. But along the same line, you guys have anything else you want to say? You have anything else you want to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to start talking about emotional intelligence, like Andrea said. Unfortunately, I see that becoming an issue with social media being involved. I feel like social media tears people away from people. It just keeps them in a corner where they're just staring at a phone, and it takes away from the emotional attachment of actually talking to a person. So when you speak about emotional intelligence, with this upcoming generation, how do we break that, or how are we able to get through to them so they can, you understand my question?
I'm going to let you answer that. Go ahead. I'm going to let you answer, but I'm going to give you a statistic before you, once she finishes.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Go
Well,
ahead.
no, that was pretty much it.
Okay. The number one reason for divorce now is separation is social media. It has risen to the top above infidelity and anger and stuff. It's the number one reason for divorce.
But that's because all of that happens on social media. And so now they just put it under the bucket of social media. So it is infidelity because, oh, you got that IG model and you talking about how fine she is in her DMs. What is wrong with you? Oh, that guy sent you a DM and you was just like, thank you so much. Yeah, what's wrong with y'all? You know what I'm saying? And then other ones, it's just like, then it's, oh, you didn't post me? We went on vacation. I posted you 10 times. But you only posted me 6.
Right.
Listen, if this is the hill you're going to die on, bless your heart.
And let's talk about the likes too. You like somebody else's photo, you didn't like mine. Or,
Oh, yes.
Well,
Why is
did you
this
get-
person watching your stories all the time?
Exactly.
Like you can stop them from watching.
Do you
right?
get what I'm saying? Right. Do you get what, right. You get what I'm saying? So it becomes that thing. So that's the bucket that it falls under. But if they broke
And you
it
know
down,
what's interesting? Social media allows us to be what we have yet to become. And because of that, like you ain't had but 4 friends in high school and 3 of them was imaginary. Now you got 500 friends and you think you really got a... You okay? You okay? 3 of them imaginary. Me, myself, and I, all imaginary. Come on, man. Really?
So all in all, how do we break that though?
And I think it's important to continue to do things like what we're doing right now. We have to continue to have conversations with each other and intergenerationally, right? So we have a wide range of ages on this panel. And I think it's important that we continue to have conversations with the generations that are coming behind us so that they understand and they have the opportunity to see perspective from different directions. Because if you're only being fed one thing, so let's say, for example, you are on social media and you consume a lot of one specific person's content, that's feeding into you. And if you don't have the perspective of anyone else, so for example, let's say that we're listening to the Let's Talk Like Men podcast, right? Let's just say they have a fabulous podcast and they have, great information for men. But let's say that it wasn't. Let's say that it was something, negative. So they like to call it red pill content. I don't think that that's what they do. But if it was, and there's a young man that's listening to it, and he doesn't have the perspective of, a Pastor D-Ray or a dad or a mom that is feeding them something externally, all they're going to know is what is being shared on what they're consuming. And so it's important that, one, I think social media can be good, right? It does give you the opportunity to connect with people from all different walks of life. It does give you the opportunity to have different perspective, but you need to ensure that you're also grounding yourself in the perspective of people that you trust. You don't know where people are coming from on social media. And so I think to answer your question, how do we ensure that, we kind of break this situation where we have a lot of people that don't have emotional intelligence because they're only online? It is the duty of those in older generations to ensure that the younger generations have that perspective and they know what's important. That's my thought process.
But you know what? The older generation, has to be open to break the traditional mindset because, you can't make you're gonna stay barefoot and pregnant. You like no. This is a whole different thing. Let me say this, and I'll let you guys talk. But you said something that if we constantly fed the same thing, We don't know. Since September the 4th, right? You keep adding days.
Well, the 4th you did eat, so the 5th is the 5th.
I said the second one time, she said the 3rd. I said the 3rd, she said the 4th. Now, September the 10th, anyway, I have not had meat since September the 5th. Not one drop of it. Not 1 drop of it. Not 1 ounce of one drop. Not even drinking meat. But here's what, because for so many years, I've had meat in my diet. And for the last several months, I was on a protein kick where I was eating a steak every day. When I got off of the meat, which I decided, I just wanted to make some dietary changes for a minute, I did not realize how much great vegetarian food is out there. Because I never tried it, because I always ate that particular thing. And now that I'm finding such a variety, I started out, I told her, I said, I'm going to do 30 days. Got to the end of 30 days, I said, I'm going to do 60 days. She said, are you serious? Wow. Now I got to the end of this, I'm going to go to Thanksgiving because I'm constantly finding different varieties of food that are healthy that satisfy my need to eat, right? And not just a hunger. I mean, so I'm taking care of my body, but also I've learned that there's so many other variety of foods out there that I just was not accustomed to. So now I can talk on a plethora of different types of food that's good. So what you were saying is that we have to expose, even my generation, we have to expose ourselves to, like my daughter. I told my daughter, I said, baby, thank you. You caused your dad's eyes to be open. Because I was big enough I was small enough to follow so she could lead me. In other words, well, I'm your dad, and, because she said, Dad, you're not saying anything. I said, because I'm learning. You're teaching me something.
Definitely agree. But going back to what Tiki was saying about the generation, the unfortunate piece is not just the younger generation. This is our generation and older. Because how many times do you see people and families at restaurants and they're, this, and nobody is talking? And you can have 5 generations at the table and nobody is talking. Right. So because we are now, everything is at our fingertips and everything is programmed for 2 seconds, right? 2 seconds of input and it's like next, right? We don't know how to put the phones away. We become very dependent. So as we have to actually start here. When I say at home, right here. And so you have to start with yourself. How much social media time? I don't know about an Android, but on an iPhone, it will tell you. If you put that alert on your phone, it'll say, you have this much screen time. You can also lock yourself, you can program it to shut your games down and different things like that to give yourself a break because so many people are not speaking to each other. And now it's it's easier, let me just send a text. And it's just no, but the personable piece is to hear your voice, but take it into the realm of emotional intelligence is not only do I hear it, but I am sensing something. I'm slowing the conversation down. So even if I'm calling, Andrea, I'll call you hey, Andrea, how are you today? And I'm pausing to even hear. And you hear the response because I care enough because it's just Or listening to the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit may put a person on your heart to call. You're just why I think I need to reach out to this person, but guess what? Then here comes this next thing. Oh, this is popping off. Okay, and then boom, I got to get this, and then I get and then next thing you know, we have not obeyed the Holy Spirit nor the voice, right? So we got to pull it back. We have to slow it down and really get back into it because so many people are developing these levels of anxiety like not before. So it's slowing it down, being intentional, being in tune with your own emotions and being able to identify them. And if you don't know how to identify them, hey, it's this thing, and get it for free $99 because some people are charging $50. I cannot believe it. But anyway, it's called an emotions wheel or a feelings wheel. Identify your emotions, see where you are, but then also check in with the people who are around you. A good thing for families and or couples, and I don't care, I love your term, unpartnered. So my friends and I, we do mental health check-ins. I'm like, hey, girl, how you doing? And for real, let's slow it down. Let's have a conversation. We do this a couple times a week. We call each other and or we meet up. With couples, the couples that I work with, they have a time set aside every week. They pick the day, they pick the time, but they get 20 minutes to talk. Another person gets 10 minutes to state what they heard, and then vice versa, and they switch it. No electronics, no TV. This is that physical touch, that's that quality time when we're talking about love languages and everything else. So you can develop the true level of intimacy that can get you to higher levels of emotional intelligence.
But you said something very, 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 very important. Intentional. On purpose. Intentional. Well, while Thursdays are set aside on purpose to do, just like you said. You said something too, but then my daughter said the same thing. She said, Dad, I have partnerships around me that we actually check on each other once a week, and we ask each other, how you doing? And then we don't, no, how you doing? Tell me if you want to go out and just, run your car through, and, just tear up something because you're mad if you want to throw something through the window. Just, be honest with that. And so now it's all making sense to me because, again, I was looking at it in a totally different way for whatever reason. I just didn't see it as being able to work together. But really, to be honest with you, in order to have a successful relationship, you got to have a successful partnership in it. If not, it's just not going to work.
And can I add a little bit more to that? I'm sorry. I want to add a little bit more because I'm a transplant. I've only been in Houston 2 years. Before that, I spent 14 years in North Carolina. I am from Detroit. What up, dog? And I don't have any family here. So I have to be very intentional to build my support, my family, my family, and everything else here. So all my
family?
Yes, friend, family.
Oh,
yes,
I thought that was
family.
the Ebonics were family.
We're gonna talk offline, sir. Almost made me flip my hair, but
You better be glad I like you. Cause I'll
Same.
fade to black on it.
Same.
Tell me what happened to the program.
So it's very important. I know, because it's as a transplant, it is extremely important that you have a support system, a base, and people who are real, true, genuine, and authentic. And they can tell you the truth, and they'll speak it in a loving way instead of the ones that be trying to rip your hearts out. So it's definitely, you got to have that. You know what I'm saying? And so you have no other choice. I mean, you do, but if you want to be lonely, that's one thing. But you have to be intentional. You have to be truthful. You got to be transparent, and you got to be on purpose and show up.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback off what you said, what I'm starting to see is, yes, you're wanting to be intentional. Yes, you're wanting to be truthful, but I'm hearing a lot of people, they're afraid to tell their friends about themselves because they don't want to lose the friendship. So my whole thing is, what is causing that? Because people, I mean, sometimes you're just trying to help folks, right? Help them just, hey, you have a lot of people saying the same thing about you. Maybe it's time to take a look in the mirror, but people are like, well, now they're not talking to me. So people are not on the receiving end, for one. I mean, people have to be open to listen and, really open. And that's not happening anymore. And people are losing friendships because they're being intentional and they're wanting to help out friends or family. And they're losing these people because, oh, they hurt my feelings or they should have never said this to me. So once again, how do we fix that?
Yeah, so I want to address that. I want to address what you were talking about with the social media as well. But I'll start with what you're talking about right now. I think first off, we have to get to a place in the friendships and the relationships that we have in our life to where something that I know you've expressed before with Leotis is like, I don't want friends around me who can't give me the truth, right? And that's part of it. And the other side of it, too, is you got to love people so much and love the people in your life so much to the point to where I would risk this friendship and you not being cool with me and not being around me, but know that I told you the truth and know that I was there for you and know that I told you something that you need to hear rather than keep it nice and fragile around you and not tell you the truth and let you suffer. I would rather give you the truth about yourself in the best way that I can and let you react to that. If that means you got to cut me off, because then at least I know that you can never say that I wasn't there for you. And a lot of times we're so scared of being alone ourselves. And so that's why we're afraid to tell that person, I'm not afraid to be alone, right? Like, if you leave, you leave. I have other people that are in my life that are good people, right? I got God at the end of the day, and he'll put the right people around me. So if it goes wrong, if me loving you, and I'm of course I may not say it the right way, so you have to take accountability for the ways you can do it wrong. But if I know that I'm coming to you and you just can't deal with that, I don't want to be around people who cannot be corrected, because then you're just a walking time bomb. Every single time something happens and nobody can tell you about yourself, why would I want to be around that? And the second thing I'll say, when you talk about the social media aspect, I think that consumption reflects the desires of your heart. So Pastor Ray just talked about how, I'm assuming you wanted to eat a little bit healthier, right? You're like, I want to be healthier. So you cut out the meat, right? Your consumption changed because your heart said, let's be healthier, right? When people change their heart posture and say, I want positivity around me, I don't want negativity around me. When your homeboy or your homegirl call you with some drama, you tell them, I don't want to hear that no more. You stop the consumption of it, right? So when you talk about social media, your feed tells me who you really are. Those feeds are designed to reflect exactly what you like, what you spend your time looking at. So if you say that we talk about it, breaking up marriages, you say you're a faithful man or a faithful woman, you open up your Instagram, how much half-naked people are running up and down your timeline? When you click your Explore page, how much nonsense is on your page? How much lust is surrounding your platform? How much God is on your page? Because when I redirected my algorithm, the only 3 things I see pop up on my algorithm now are the people that I love, things about God and marriage, and sports. Those are the 3 things that pop up on my feed. I don't have half-naked people like popping up anymore. I don't have, women twerking on my feed anymore. I don't have drama and fights and all this nonsense on my page anymore. Your consumption reflects the desires of your heart. And so if you're really trying to change, if you're really trying to keep a relationship together in a social media age, make your feed reflect the desires that you want in your real life.
Yeah.
Let me say this before you comment on it. I want to with what the kid said. The question, we don't have to answer this, but how many true friends do we really have? That's the question. How many, and then watch this. Proverbs 27:6 says this: faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Faithful are the wounds of a real friend. And what you were talking about, Miles, I told Leo this Hightower, I don't need any yes people around me. Brother, if you're going to say yes every time, I don't, and I'm just that matter of fact, too. Okay.
No, I think it's important, and that's a great scripture reference. I think it's important that you curate the people that you're around, because it's important. Like, you have to be very, very intentional about the way that you navigate this life. We have a set amount of time. It's finite. We don't know when it's going to end. And it's important that you fill that time in that space that you're in with relationships that allow you to just lay bare. But importantly there, you have to be willing to lay it bare. You have to be able to do the work and say, I am willing to feel embarrassed in this situation and say, hey, I trust you so much that I need to let you know what I'm struggling with. Because if I don't, I'm going to continue to struggle with this, and I'm going to be by myself struggling with this, and I don't want to be by myself struggling with this, so I need to have a space where I feel safe and comfortable to be able to say, hey, girl, hey, man, this is what's going on in my life. What should I do? How should I? Can you pray with me? What have you ever experienced this? I think that that's very, very important, but it takes a level of security, intimacy, emotional maturity to be able to get to a place where you can say, hey, I feel comfortable and safe, and I can lay everything bare in this situation. I'll also go to something that Miles mentioned about social media. I tell people this all the time. I work in social media on a day-to-day basis. So if I was to open my Instagram right now, you would see things about social media, you would see things about sports, and you would see things about God. That's it. But I have intentionally curated my feed to give me what I need from social media. And I will say this till I'm blue in the face. You can create the social media world that you live in. It's all based on you. So if you decide that your Explore page, you want to make a change, you want to make a change in what you are consuming, you can do just like Pastor D. Ray. You can cut all those things out. You don't have to continue to be fed what it gives you. You can alter that immediately. And if you want to talk about how we do that, please feel free to hit me.
Thanks. I want to mention something, right? A word that keeps popping up is decide, right? Decide, decide, decide. So you have choose or choice, you have decisions. When you choose something, that means you have options, right? Maybe today I'm going to do this and tomorrow I'm going to do that. I'm choosing. But when I'm deciding, I'm cutting off any other option. And I think until people decide that we want to be more emotionally intelligent, it won't happen. Till you decide that you want to cut out meat, it won't happen. Till you decide that you want to cut off friends, it won't happen. Like I remember 2020, I decided that I was no longer going to live the life that I was living, and I was going to give my life to Christ. And that involved me starting my process of deleting certain things on social media. I was following 6,000 people at the time, and I decided to unfollow 5,000 of them. Right. So that was one thing. And then anytime that I was going through stress or going through, I was sitting in my emotions for too long, I was choosing to be with women because I would much rather have something to hold than to hold myself. Right. I would much rather have you to fill my void and not to talk about my emotions, but to express my emotions through physical activity. And then I decided that I'm going to spend more time by myself and sit in it. Right. I decided that when I moved to Houston, I wasn't going to live in the city. I'm going to live away from the city because me being close to the nightlife, that's not the life I wanted to live. So, right. So I knew I needed to be in the Woodlands or somewhere far away. And I decided to make my weekends feel like a Monday. That means that even though it's the weekend, I'm going to still study. I'm going to still read. I'm going to still try to make some money. I'm going to still try to develop myself. I decided that I was going to become a plant dad. I wanted to watch something grow, and I wanted to pour into something.
A plant dad?
Yeah.
Okay, I never heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, when you go buy a plant from birth, and you watch it flourish, and I decided to continue pouring into it. So, and it was because of that time that I sat out, and I took time away from the nightlife. I took time away from women. I took time away from filling my voids with BS and filling my voids with journaling and praying and spending time with myself. And I remember a time when I was working on expressing myself, and I remember I was going through it, and I had texted my dad. I was like, "Yo, Pops, I need a prayer." So he called me. When he called me, I had no words, all emotions, and he felt what I needed, and he just started praying. In those moments, I would typically go grab something to drink. In those moments, I would typically go call somebody to come over, but I decided to sit in my emotions. So we talk about will it take for people to become more emotionally intelligent. You have to decide that the life that you're living isn't producing fruit, so you have to decide you want more. So that's what I want to share.
Yeah.
Okay, just really quick. So, Takia, I think to sum it up, we're all saying it starts here first.
Speak up just a little bit for me.
It starts with us first, right? We got to be the change we want to see first. To get real, have that truthful conversation, sit with us, be able to communicate, and also tell us about our good stuff and not our not so good stuff. Work on our communication skills and styles, because some people are conflict avoidant, so they would tip-tap, they'll do the Al Jolson dance around everything, right? Other times people are people pleasers, where they're like, oh, I just want everybody to be happy, and I just want to please everybody. And it's impossible. So the people who are online watching us, it is impossible to please everybody. Give it up. But what it really takes is that self-realization and then holding yourself accountable to saying, okay, if this is the life that I want to live and I want this type of friendship, I have to be on purpose intentional in communicating it and vulnerable. And if a person can take it, because some people can't take it, but they will respect you. Like their feelings will be hurt. And they can respect you. They may be a little silent, but they'll get over it. And then they'll come back and be like, you know what? Thank you. You're the realest person I ever met. Thank you so much. Other ones, wish them well. I look at people like sometimes like seats on the bus. We put people on the wrong seats. Some people might need to be on our bus, okay? But we put them in different roles that we think that they should fit instead of letting them show us where they should be, if they should be there. If they're not, let them off at the next stop. Free that seat up for the person who's supposed to be there. And if they are, then rearrange it if you have to. And don't be afraid to do a relationship quality check-in with anybody in your life. This could be your parents. This can be your best friend. You all are partners in your podcast. You can do it there. Your the love situation, even with your children. And here's the thing. Parents, it's usually top down. But sometimes it need to be bottom up. Because your children are watching you, even though you think that you're displaying or saying one thing, them kids are sitting there like, oh, for real? Like, oh, but this is what you did, but you told me this. So listen to the feedback of your children. I'm not saying let them run all over you and say whatever they want to say, no. But let your children have a voice, because this is what happens too. Parents will sit there and be like, oh, don't say nothing. And then when they get a certain age, why aren't you standing up for yourself? How do you not do it? Did you ever train them? Because I know we came up at a time where it was like child stay in a child's place, right? Now we could talk in between each other, you know what I'm saying? But somebody else as an adult is like, So now that's why we have those little secrets called molestation and rape and different things like that, because we was like, oh, you don't talk to adults like that.
Don't forget about the village.
Oh yes.
We used to have a village. We don't have a village anymore.
Baby, let me tell you.
I wish you would say something to my child. I wish you would correct my child.
Do you see what I'm saying?
When
And
we were growing up, it was okay to do that, but now.
Oh, down the whole block. What? And I miss it.
know.
I miss it.
But Rex, thank you for sharing that. And just like she was saying that, really, we cannot be effective in another person's life if ourself is not in a position to be that. We have to be complete. We have to be healed. We have to have emotional intelligence and say, and be honest with ourselves. An older gentleman told me this years ago. He said, if you lie to yourself, you'll lie to anybody. So you have to be honest with yourself where you are in terms of, she gets on me all the time. You just like being by yourself. I've learned how to be so content at being, so I'm good. So now when I want people in my life, I can bring them in my life on purpose. And not because I need a crush, not because I need something to lean on, like you were saying. I taught my kids when they're growing up, I told them this. I said, you can tell me anything. It's how you tell me. It would be determined whether you get knocked out or whether you stay sitting upright. So that's why I think one of the reasons why my daughter and I have such a good relationship, because she knows that she can tell her dad anything, but it's how you tell me. It's how you tell me. So we got to get back to these basic principles, and I want to say this, and then you can talk. We got to understand that in a partnership, our partner now becomes our second investment or our third investment. God first, we invest in God, we invest in ourselves, then we invest in our partner in order for this thing to really work.
I like that. I like that a lot. And also, can I just make a request? Because can you hear me? Okay. I just want to make a request. I've noticed that sometimes we are she, and Rex and Miles have names. So I'm Darnita.
Okay. You know what? I'm glad you said that, because I didn't want to mess your name up.
It's okay. It's Darnita.
Darnita.
Yes, Darnita.
Because she already knows. She going to talk about me. I've always said, how did I say your name? You. You hear? Did you hear it? No, watch this. Go ahead. Say it again. Say it again.
My name is Andrea, but,
I always said Andrea, Andrea.
Lots of different ways.
And I had to ask Tiki several times how to say your name. So I'm glad you brought that up, because our show was like, I'm on the air. I can't say, girl, what's your name? How you say?
Well, you did that the first time. I was fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah, always just ask me my name.
No,
when we get she, that's a little impersonal for me.
Okay.
And so I just want to make that request on the panel.
You good. Your request noted.
Thank you.
We're
I
going to edit
appreciate
that out of the, no, just, but thank you for that. Okay. Man, thank you, Darnita and Andrea, for being on the program.
I'll say thank you for allowing me to be so.
All right. So, did you have another question, or?
Oh, no, I just wanted to talk about the algorithms, right? Because I know that you said sports, God, and was family?
Well, no, friends, yeah.
Okay, marriage, I'm sorry. Sometimes we say things. These phones are so smart, they pick it up. And next thing you know, it's on your feed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get rid of that? With this algorithm, AI, all that, how do you get rid of it?
I'll speak to this. You have to engage with the things that you want to see. So you have to intentionally
Say that again,
you
Andrea.
have to engage with the things that you want to see. So just like we've been speaking about intentionality, you have to be intentional about engaging with the kind of content that you would like to fill your feed. So for example, on Facebook, if you are liking certain things, or even if you watch it too long, it will start to recognize that this is something of interest to you, and it will continue to feed it to you. With Instagram, for example, there is a section on the app that's called the Explore page. So on the Explore page, it'll provide you with content that it thinks that you might be interested in based on what you previously engaged with, whether that's a comment or a share or what have you. So you, in your Explore page, can click any of the things that they feed you. You can push it, and you can say, you know what, I don't want to see this anymore. And it'll go away, and it will try to figure out what it is that you actually want to see. To answer your question, you have to be intentional about engaging with the things that you actually want to have in your algorithm.
Well, I'm just saying, in speaking, if I'm having a
Oh, yeah.
conversation with someone, and next thing I know, it's on my feed, and it's just like, wait a minute.
You
You
know what I'm
can,
saying? I
yeah, you
mean-
can definitely turn off your phone will listen to you, but you can turn that off, their settings.
yeah,
Well, it's
and
also, it's just, again, also we talked about just the power of words. It's what you're saying, too. We can change our conversation as well. You know, it's funny. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and, you know, it's funny because I like certain gadgets because I cook, right? I like certain gadgets. And so I was looking at this I forgot, it's called I don't know if it's called a swisher or whatever, where you push it up and down and it mixes the eggs up, or mixes whatever, what do you call it? It's like a hand
Like an immersion blender.
just one
Yeah.
little hand. No, you push it up and down like this.
Oh, okay.
So I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, this is fascinating. Why every other clip now comes up that has that thing on this? So what you were saying is true. Darnitra, she had to leave, so I want to say thank you for her hanging out with us the time that she did. And she's waving at us back. All right, thank you. Well, she'll figure it out.
To the left, to the left.
All right, so go ahead. Well, I thought she was going to.
I was gonna say, you know, and even if you don't turn off the settings with the voice, you know, recognition and seeing what you're talking about, just don't engage. That's the best thing you do. If an ad pops up, swipe next. Go on to the next one. If you, like she said, if you spend too much time on it, if you click it, if it says shop now and you click it to go look at the prices, anything, any type of engagement outside of moving on to the next one, it will reinforce it and it's going to send you more. And please, if you click that shop now button or anything of this source, you're going to be hit with not only that brand, but every other supporting brand like it. They're going to flood your feed with it. So the key is, at the end of the day, don't engage. If it does pop up on your feed and you don't like it, either click that, you know, I'm not interested in this, don't send this to me anymore, or keep swiping. After a few days, you won't see it anymore.
Because in there something on there that says, would you like to see more of these?
Yeah,
You can say
it'll
yes
happen.
or no. Okay, yeah. All right, let's talk about, do you have any more questions? Do you have any more questions you want to pose? Let's talk about, excuse me, let's talk about, and we discussed this on the radio, so I want to talk a little bit about it, because we got a little bit of time left. 10 reasons why we should have a partnership, an advantage of it as in a relationship. Number one, right here, it enhances emotional support. And I think, you know, again, sir, your quote is so awesome. When we bring our strengths together, we multiply our strengths and divide our weaknesses. But when we focus on our weaknesses, we multiply our weaknesses and divide our strengths. Did I say it correctly? Yeah, that is so powerful. So just that enhanced emotional support when you're in a real relationship. This emotional stability goes beyond just mere comfort. It is a fundamental human need for connection and belonging. That is a fundamental need. That's why a lot of young people, when I was growing up, got involved with gangs, because they didn't have that. They didn't have that bond. They didn't have that family. So You guys want to discuss, talk about a bit, elaborate on that a little bit, or want to go to the next one?
No, I think that's very, very important. I think being able to identify the importance of having an emotional support system is one of the most important things that you can ever have. I think that sometimes we don't recognize how much we need other people. We're in a time period where we move through life and we all have our own situations, we have our own lives, we have our own jobs, and it can be easy to be extremely independent. But I do think it's important that we continue to find ways to find ourselves in community and find ourselves in relationships with people, as I said earlier, that allow us to be our full selves, that we can lay bare in front of, because there is a benefit to being emotionally open with other people. If you are constantly to yourself, you only have yourself. Again, if you only have that singular perspective, right? You could be thinking one thing about yourself, you may be having negative self-talk. But if you allow yourself to be open to someone else, the things that you may think are just horrible, you speak to someone and they provide you with a different perspective. Now your mind is open to something different. And so I think it's important that we find ways and opportunities and times to really be in community, but also to find ourselves in real partnership and be open to being that space for someone else as well. So being intentional about opening the door and saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm not going to put you in a position where you have to feel, or where you could feel judged. I want you to know that I'm here for you. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold you accountable. It just means that you can tell me anything, and I'm going to provide you with feedback if you are open to receive it.
That's awesome. This came to me earlier, and it just came to me again, that the more we talk about it, and I think, Miles, you brought it up, the more we are exposed to something, the greater the chances are that we'll connect with it. And so the more we talk about this, the more open we become to the fact, wow, partnerships are the foundation of any relationship, even a romantic relationship. Because again, I was closed-minded, and I wasn't closed-minded on purpose. I just viewed it a certain way until my daughter started talking to me about it. And when she started talking to me about it, the more we were out to this great restaurant. Her and I just had some father-daughter time, just enjoying ourselves. But I couldn't wait to get back to her apartment to research this more, because she had ignited that flame on the inside of me. She had exposed me to something that I never thought about and how it looked before. And I'm like, wow. And I contacted Tiki, and I said, you know what? I said, man, my daughter has exposed me to this, and this is going to be some good stuff. So I think you got, probably about 12 emails from me? Quite a few? Yeah, because, again, now I got exposed to something. Like I said, I wasn't closed-minded on purpose, but I just never thought about it in the light of the way Jasmine presented to me.
I mean, you were in a space where you were with someone that you trusted, your daughter, and that allowed you to be open enough to receive some new information. So it was just, you have to find places and spaces that you can be in which you trust someone enough to challenge your perspective on whatever the situation may be.
You guys want to comment on that? We're good. We'll go to the second one. The second one is, you want to say the second one? Did you pull that one up? Go ahead.
Oh, you sure you want to talk about this one?
What is it? Go ahead. Personal growth.
And
what? Can I tell y'all a funny joke? Steve Harvey said this. I was laughing so hard at this knucklehead, because I was going to make up another word when I saw this word. But Steve Harvey had these guests come on, and so he was telling this, and I was in tears laughing. He said, my next guest is an aubergine. Said she was an aubergine, O-B-G-Y-N. So I was going to mess with you on that one. So personal growth and empathy. Let's talk about that. Go ahead. You want me to read it, or you want to read it?
I can read it.
Come on, read it. Come on.
Engaging in a relationship often sets the stage for significant personal growth. As we navigate the intricacies of a partnership, we are naturally ushered into a world where empathy and selflessness take precedence. Understanding and relating to the feelings and perspectives of our partner not only enhances the relationship, but also contributes to our own emotional and personal development.
Yep.
Go ahead. I know you got it. I
Abs-
know. Do you have a chart that you can share with us on that one?
No, no. Right,
You,
right.
you and I said, Miles.
You know-
I asked him if he had a chart because this guy comes up with some great stuff. Go
So
ahead.
let's talk about empathy, right? So empathy is your ability to put yourself in your partner's shoes and see things from their perspective, right? And a piece of that has to do with paying attention to two things: the content and the feelings, right? The content is she gets upset if I leave my shoes in the living room after we discuss put my shoes away in the closet, right? That's the content. But what's the feelings? The feelings is I feel disrespected. The feelings is I don't feel heard. The feelings is the different things. What we tend to do is we like to, men, push empathy aside. Yeah, push the feelings aside and get defensive, right? But I did it because it's all these excuses, right? But empathy is you listening to her and saying, okay, I know the content, but what are the feelings? If you don't understand the content and the feelings, you won't put yourself in a position to understand what they are trying to say, what they are trying to portray, and then what they want you to feel, right? So that's why empathy is going to be so important. Like, for example, my lady, she is very soft-spoken, and she gets hurt very easily. So I have to be mindful of my jokes. I have to be mindful of a lot of things, and one thing in particular. So I grew up in a very black household, right? Very fun. And when we play card games, we're aggressive, right? Uno, we're playing aggressive, and we talk back and forth, and it's not rude or disrespectful. So my lady invited me to a game night with her and her friends, and we're drinking a little bit. So I'm having a good time. I'm mingling because I'm a people person, and we get to playing Uno. So it's probably about 8 of us playing Uno. Now, typically when you play and your partner's standing beside you, you think you guys are like on teams. So, right.
That's where we come from.
Right. So we're playing, and I'm feeling myself, and I'm feeling good about the game. And then my lady reversed it, and then she hit me with a draw 4. I said, okay, I'll take that. And then she hit me with a draw 4 again. I said, oh, okay. Let's see where we going with this one. So she ended up getting around, and she had got down to Uno, but she had put 2 cards down that didn't make sense, right? So she had put like what she say, reversing the skip down together. And everybody was like, nah, bro, just let it go. I said, hell no, she got to pick that back up. And they was like, bro, just let it go. So after that happened, I wasn't paying attention, but after the game, I saw her in the corner with her friend with her eyes watery. And I'm kind of tipsy at the moment. I had to tighten up a little bit, go over to the corner. I'm like, hey, what's going on? She was like, what you did was a lie. She was like, I've never played like that before. Everybody said it was cool, and you kept saying, no, it wasn't cool, and you made me pick that card back up. I don't think that was fair. And in my household, that's soft. You're a tighten up. But I had to remember, she didn't grow up in my household. So it just like, in my past, I would have took that moment and would have got pissed off. And I would have stopped playing games for the rest of the night, and I've been ready to go. But I was like, you know what? I can't do what I used to do. I have to be more empathetic and say, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. I do apologize for making you feel that way. I'll be more mindful the next time we play. And she was like, I really appreciate that. So me being empathetic in that moment, trying to understand her and putting my pride aside, ego aside, I was able to do that, and I was able to reroute. So the next time, I knew I can't. I got to be softer with her.
All right.
But that be real though, because it is difficult when you think something that's trivial, right? As a card game, as Uno, as playing by the rules. Let's get this straight.
Keep in mind, Miles, we came up in a household where,
I know.
oh, it's on.
Oh, I know.
Break out with the spades,
Exactly.
the Uno.
Exactly. I'm not letting you
even
in.
that game operation,
You got
I'm gonna try to
good.
whoop-
You got good in my household by getting beat, and eventually you got to a point you're like, I'm tired of losing. So you got better. That's how you got better. Nobody was sparing you. You learned spades. You was just getting whooped. So something as trivial as playing a card game by the rules, but it means something deeper to that person, right? And we listen and we hear and we speak from different languages, right? That's the thing that I had to learn is my girl talks if you meet my girl talks the most mess. She got a quick wit back for anything that you say to her. She's a good ish talker, as we like to say. She can get with the best of them, but she can't take it. Right? You hit her back with something and she feel like it's a low blow or something like that. She's going to internalize that very quickly. Now, it won't happen with other people, but it will happen with me. Right? I'm like, man, when my boys was saying this, you was firing back with them, but didn't mean anything. But you're my man, right? Like, you're the person I trust. You're the person I'm close with, and I didn't think you would hit me with that. I felt like that was out of line. And I'm sitting there like, I don't understand why this is. You talk the most nonsense to people. How is it that you can't take it? Right? And then that's when I realized, like, a lot of people talk hard, but they listen soft. Right? And if you try to speak to people in the language that you hear them talking in versus in the language that they hear in, you're always going to be on a different page. So I'm talking so direct
say that
to
again,
her.
sir. 'Cause I
Yeah.
want say that again.
If you always try to communicate to a person in the language you see them talking in, but you never find out and realize what language they hear in, then you're never going to get what your message is through.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Because you remember that skeleton they found named Lucy? They said it was the missing link. I think you just hit the missing link in most fallouts in relationships.
Yeah.
Because we do hear and listen differently.
Yep, we do.
And
Everybody
we speak
does.
differently than we hear.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that because, man, because again, empathy is one of those things that's been a challenge for me.
I understand.
You probably can't tell.
Sorry.
I can tell by how Tiki been looking.
Really? Can we just fade to black? Y'all are wrong. But anyway, so that has been a challenge for me because I grew up in that environment. Man, don't be a punk. Pull it, what?
Yep.
Come on, toughen up. Only sissies cry.
Yeah.
So I grew up hearing that, and then I got involved in some very aggressive sports such as football, martial arts. I got involved in Jeet Kune Do, not just any martial art. I'm talking about Muay Thai. I mean, so when I got in the ring, I'm like, it's just been a challenge for me. But I want to ask you this one question. When you said what you said to your girl, did she constantly throw it back up in your face, or did she say, okay, thank you, I really appreciate that, and that was into that conversation?
She said it once.
Okay. The reason why I say that because sometimes we can empathize with a person and we can apologize. If that person keeps bringing it back up and up and up again, that creates another scenario where, you know what? What do you want from me? You want to extract more out of me than more of the payment out of me than this thing should be? Come on, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think two things, and I'm reading this book called Male Sexuality. And you would think it's all about sex, but it's all about communication, empathy, right, and learning how to be assertive. But this says, anytime conflict arises and your partner has a complaint, the complaint leads you to patterns. If they constantly complain, you're constantly doing something. If they constantly have to say you're not being empathetic or they keep bringing it up, that means you struck the same nerve in them that you did the first time on a consistent basis. So then it's the time for you to reevaluate yourself and say, in what areas am I not empathetic? And 9 times out of 10, for a man that says, for you, example, you have a hard time being empathetic because you're not empathetic with yourself. You don't allow yourself to feel much. You don't allow yourself to sit and loathe in emotions, even though they're necessary to sit and loathe in it, because emotions come with stories. And if you don't understand the story behind the emotion in yourself, you'll never try to understand the story behind the emotion in your partner. So I think that is where it falls.
And that's a good point because I say to myself, come on, let's get over this. Man, what's the deal? So then it's funny because I process it, and I always use this quote. Nelson Mandela said, "I never lose. I either win or I learn." So I have narrowed my choices down. I'm not just gonna sit there and just, woe is me. I'm gonna get up and so yeah, I never thought about that.
I'm gonna add something to that. Oftentimes, I'll say women do it too, but as a man, I know how often I've done it and how often I've seen it done. A lot of times we'll say the thing that's empathetic or we'll say we're sorry, but we're really doing that just because we want the situation to be over, not because we actually have received those emotions and felt like they're valid and really want to make a change to not have the scenario happen again. And so it's like putting a Band-Aid over a wound instead of addressing the actual root, right? You got to heal it. So prime example, if I recognize that when I talk to my girl as direct as she always speaks to me, it always causes conflict, and I'm wondering why she's crying. I didn't cry when you told me this direct. Well, because, Miles, you receive things directly, and that's a way that you can deal with them. She doesn't, right? That's a defense mechanism of hers. That's a way for her to respond because that's the way when she was growing up, she felt like she had to be heard, was for her to talk very direct. But when she receives that back, especially from a man, it's different than when her homegirls are saying it to her because she grew up around women. She can receive that from them. But when a man is saying it direct to her, it makes her shut down. It makes her feel very small. It triggers her in a lot of different ways, and now I'm wondering why she's crying. Well, if I'm tired of seeing this particular action taking place, this particular outcome, and I can control my response, I'm going to have to go through the uncomfortable journey of changing my approach with her. And yes, it sucks, right? Because it is easier for me to just talk the way that I want to talk or talk to you the way that you're talking to me. But what I had to tell myself is leadership is not predicated on how you treat me. If I'm going to be the person that stands here and says I'm going to communicate in a way that's going to create a healthy dynamic in this relationship, then regardless of how you talk to me, I have to take a second, even if you done pissed me off and got me worked up, I got to sit there and take a deep breath and say, I'm not going to respond to you the way that you might even deserve to be responded to right now. I'm going to meet you with love. And I let her know that in those circumstances. And it does something to her because she recognizes in that moment, okay, I'm tripping, and the growth that you see, a lot of people will say, well, I'm tired of doing that. That's a lot to be putting forward. First off, what are you in a relationship for? Because things take time, and it's not going to be something that after you say you're sorry the first time or after you do the empathetic thing the first time, now there's not going to be any more problems. No, it's going to happen again. But what has happened over time is now when these circumstances happen, she can catch herself. You know what, I'm talking to you wrong. I apologize, and I don't even have to say nothing. Or if I do let her know, before, it would have taken an hour-long conversation for her to realize what she was doing. Now, if I say it, she knows that she's doing it.
In other words, what should have took about 3 minutes took an hour.
Exactly.
I want to say this too because again, like I said, just hearing you guys, obviously, if you listen honestly, you can locate yourself. Part of my problem is that I'm not empathetic. I'm only empathetic for so long. In other words, I try to understand where she's coming from. I mean, I really do. I really put my heart into it. But if it's met with constant pushback, now I'm saying my fuse is, okay, I tell you what, I've tried, right now we're about to cut this off. So I know that about myself. And again, I'm not trying to be that way. It's just you just have to unlearn things. So,
Yeah.
Say it again.
How does it make you feel?
How does what make me feel?
Being empathetic and you feel like, how does it make you feel whenever you're being empathetic to her, right? And you feel like you're consistently getting the pushback, like right before you're about to say, I'm not doing this anymore. Mm-hmm. What is it making you feel when she's responding in those ways?
Well, there's a couple of things that's going on. First, we talked about leadership, right? Mm-hmm. Leaders are about what? Progress, right? Leaders are about growth and progress. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm challenged in that area where by now we should have grown past some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So because of that, now my fuse is even shorter.
Yeah.
We should have grown past now. Now I have to take into consideration, just like you said, all of us are at different pace, different things that we grow and hear differently and process differently.
Yeah.
But as a leader, if I get stuck in one area too long, that means other areas are going to suffer because now I got to constantly put the attention here.
Yeah.
The second thing it makes me feel like is that, damn if I do, damn if I don't, so why do I keep trying?
Yeah.
So if I tell you, I understand, I feel you, and there's constant pushback to the point where I say, you know what, you're right, I don't feel you.
Yeah.
So that's how it makes me feel.
Man, I know exactly how you feel. This is the thing that I had to realize.
This is not real men talk. But
I think it's a good segue, and I feel like everybody's enjoying this conversation. Am I wrong? Are we good? Okay. So one thing I had to realize, to your point about progress, because I'm spending so much time on this particular thing. Other things could be lagging behind. So let's say you're an athlete, right, and you're running back. You got a lot of good attributes, and the one area you need to figure out is your strength in the fourth quarter, right? You get into the end of these games and you just can't make it, right? And so your approach is, well, if I spend too much time trying to focus on my endurance, I'm doing long distance running, well, I'm going to lose my quick twitch. Now I'm not going to be able to juke as fast. Now I'm not going to be able to do this, do that. You're spending so much time in your endurance on this one area, and it's causing fear that these other areas are now going to lag behind. But what happens in reality is, as humans, our capacity, when we work really hard on a foundational piece, actually strengthens all the other ones as well. So sometimes the fact that we feel like in our relationship, it's like, man, we're spending so much time talking about how the way that you feel when I say a particular thing, but I'm saying it for a good reason, and we're not getting the things resolved that we need to get resolved. We feel like we're not getting anywhere. But there is foundational pieces that's going to lead to the communication being better in the long run if we sit here and fix and spend the time to fix this particular problem. But if we rush through it, or if we get tired of that battle because it seems like it's so long, it's so daunting, I'm saying the same thing over and over, you're going to feel like everything else is going to fall apart. And if there's strengths, like Rex said, in a relationship, they're only going to continue to multiply as we work on those pieces. And the second thing I'm going to say is this. We got to remember to measure progress. Like, everybody measures progress differently. And you got to appreciate how that person shows up in their form of growth, right? So for my lady, one thing that was very tough for her was, like I said, she speaks very direct, very aggressive. Like, that's a natural way for her. And one thing I told her is, like, I don't want to feel like I'm at war. Every time I talk to you, the response is just so snappy. I would like to be met with love. The first thing I did was I started showing it myself, right? And then I started to really shine a light and overdo my appreciation when she would do the smallest thing that showed a change. I would give positive reinforcement to the level to where she's like, you don't have to keep doing it. No, I'm going to keep doing it because I want you to know that this is what I'm looking for, right? So when she would say something like, hey, babe, I'm not trying to, harm your feelings when I say this, but I think this could be done better. I received that, and before I even respond to what she says, thank you so much. The way that just made me feel, I can receive what you're saying, and I know you worked hard on that, because her biggest thing is, I feel like you don't appreciate, I'm trying, I feel like you don't appreciate the way I'm trying. And so when you shine a big light on the small things of growth, it motivates that person to continue to do that over and over again. But if you always nag on the little things that don't go wrong, think about it. If I focus my energy on the fact that this little thing has happened again and again, versus me focusing my energy on the times when you did the little thing right, which one is going to grow?
The one you
The
water.
one you watering.
Absolutely, the one you water.
So we got to water the small things that show appreciation, the small things that show growth, the small things that show intentionality, the small things that show empathy. And that is what a person will do. That's why I said earlier with the men, it applies to the women too. What you reinforce is what will grow.
Absolutely. Let's do this real quick. Ladies, y'all want to have comments? Because we got 10 minutes left. Y'all,
Can I say one thing?
go ahead. Yes, sir.
This is so fruitful. And this verse goes with this conversation. 2 Peter 1, verses 5 through 8, it says, for this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. For if you possess these qualities in an increasing measure, not in a constant measure, not in a delayed measure, but in an increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I believe that we get so impatient with things not working, and we think that we're supposed to stop and go back to doing what we used to do, but what we used to do never produced fruit. So I have to do these things In an increasing measure, I need to be empathetic. In an increasing measure, I need to be patient. In an increasing measure, I need to be more faithful. In an increasing measure, and if I'm not, I told a couple one time. The husband said, she feels like I don't love her, but I work so much. I bring home the money. I do this. I do that. And she said, babe, yeah, I know you work, but I don't hear you say it enough. He was like, but if I had to tell you I loved you for everything you did, or I thank you or appreciate you for everything you did, I'll be saying it forever. I said, that's the goal. Yeah, I said, you can never say it enough. You can never say I appreciate you enough. You can never say thank you, I love you, you're beautiful. You can never say that enough. And it has to be in an increasing measure. For if it's not, then it's going to be constant. Anything remains constant. You're going to get comfortable. When you remain comfortable, things die.
And we're talking about partnerships too. This is about investments.
No, I think it's important that men be okay with their emotions. I think sometimes men, from my experience, have put a premium on problem solving, which is great because we appreciate solving a problem. But I do also think it's important to understand and sit with your emotions about a certain subject. That will help you become more empathetic. It's kind of like what Miles and Rex were mentioning. If you do not sit with your own emotions, it will be difficult for you to understand a woman's emotional response to anything. Because if you are not in touch with the way you actually feel, and that was something that I would dive deeper in if we had more time, but what is the actual root? You are frustrated about not moving forward, not having forward progress. Well, what is the root of that? What is the actual feeling that you have? You feel like you're not, you're hitting a brick wall, and why should I even continue to do it? Well, what is the actual, I don't feel appreciated. I'm doing something and I don't feel appreciated. And so I think it's important that men not be afraid of their emotions, to embrace them, to learn how to harness them. And then that way you have the opportunity to know and understand when a woman responds to you emotionally, you'll have a higher probability of being able to practice that empathy.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to be transparent. When D-Ray and I met, I was very broken, got out of a really bad relationship, was having trust issues and everything else. But you guys talk about progress. And the other day I sent him a text message. And I said, every time I feel like I take a step forward, you make me feel like I'm taking a step back. And I haven't been vulnerable. And I felt like, and I even put in the text, I'm being vulnerable and transparent here. And he was busy, but he was responding to other things that I was saying in the text, but he just like pushed that to the side. And that really hurt my feelings. So when he finally called me, like after I got off work, like 6:30, he wanted to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it anymore because that was a small step for me coming from where I was. And I just kind of felt like there was no, he didn't put any thought into it. He responded to every other text message except for that one. And he could have even said, I don't think we should text about this, let's talk later. I would have been fine with that. But he never spoke on it at all. And that really hurt me. And I talked to him a lot about empathy because I feel like he's so final. His words are, his words can sometimes come across as very harsh, and then sometimes when he speaks, he's so final with everything. And it's just like, okay, why are you that way? So I try to figure out, try to get through to him, try to talk to him about certain things, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I kind of feel like I run into a brick wall sometimes too. So, I mean, I care about him a lot, and I'm here for him, and I want to work through it. But it's just, like, I know I had a rabbit fence up, with bricks and all that, but I think there's something there in front of him, too, that I can't get past. So, I don't know.
Well, let me talk to that because I was busy. I was out to lunch with business partner. We were talking about business. And when I saw the text, I said to myself, you know what? This is not something I'm going to deal with on a text because it's going to occupy too much of my time.
Yeah.
I failed to say that to her. Hey, let's deal with that. And so when I called her, first thing I said to her, I said, you know what? Your text messages was something that would have took too much time to text. I would rather talk about it. But by that time, she had already developed that. So again, in the process of me in the business meeting, working on some other things that we were working on, I didn't think, well, I'm just not going to, no. You know, I said, yeah, man, okay. When I looked at it, boom, boom, boom. But the other stuff, I was responding to her on with things that I could deal with, boom, 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 with a one text answer.
Yeah.
This one would have been back and
Paragraphs,
forth,
yeah.
and so I'm having a business meeting with this person, so I couldn't be, and that's why. But the other part about it is because I'm a very patient person.
Yeah.
I'm a very patient person. I'm a very forgiving person. I deal with things on a whole. As a matter of fact, she's even commented, how do you deal with stuff so long? How do you, like my truck was broke down for 4 months. She never saw me get angry about it until the last couple of weeks where I just went in on the guy about this. But again, that's how patient I am, because you expend a lot of energy on stuff that you can't turn around and you can't change. That's a waste of energy. So I've learned how to manage that. So when I talk about there should be movement in areas, it's because I put in the time necessary. At least I think sometimes, like, you know, a year and a half, put in time for there to be progress.
Yeah, but ain't it funny how both of y'all are saying the same thing?
Exactly the same thing, right?
Both of y'all are saying, like, I feel like I've been trying, I've been putting in effort, we've been working on this particular thing, and I feel like I'm running into a brick wall. Both people are saying the same thing. And so the question you guys have to ask yourselves, if both of you feel like you are putting in the work individually, like you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do, you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're trying your best. May not be perfect, but you know you putting in the effort to go from where y'all were at the beginning of this to where y'all are at right now. Y'all have the option to focus your energy more on the things that ain't right and shine a light on that and continue to pour energy into that and ask yourself how that makes you feel. Because you may feel good in the moment that you got to get it off your chest, right? You just be aggravating me because of this, that, and that, and I feel like you don't care about my feelings. Like, yeah, it feels good in that moment to let somebody know about themselves. But if there's never moments, I wrote down, and you might have seen this in the 5 things that a man wants from a woman. One of the things I said was for you to be as loud in your praise, if not louder, than you are in your criticism. And I mean that both ways, because that works both ways. I got to be louder in my praise than I am in my criticism of you, because it's always going to be something that I can be upset about, something that didn't go right. But if I have a spirit within me that is always so focused on every way that you're not doing what I need you to do, a person will feel inadequate.
And they'll shut down.
Exactly. Yeah. And they'll never feel good enough. And at a certain point, you have to let this person know, look, the things that I'm telling you versus who you are, if I didn't love you, if I didn't think you were worthy, if I didn't think that you were good enough, all these things, I wouldn't even be here. It's because of how good you are that we've made it this far. And we have to put more of an emphasis on praising our partner than being there, than criticizing our partner. Because you are going to be your partner's biggest critic, but you damn sure better be their biggest cheerleader. Excuse me, Lord.
No, you're good. You're good. Anybody else want to comment on that? Yeah, that's wow. So you have to, again, it's just, I think it's, again, understanding that this is a partnership, that we're building something of substance, and so we have to be willing to make the investment. We have time to just deal with one more. Is that okay? All right. Y'all can we deal with one more? All right. Yeah, you want to read that one?
Improved mental health. The impact of a loving relationship on mental well-being is profound and multifaceted. In a world where loneliness can be a common plight, having a partner can significantly alleviate feelings of isolation. The knowledge that there is someone who cares, who is constant in the ever-changing scenarios of life, can be immensely comforting. Relationships offer a unique form of emotional support that is crucial for mental health. They provide a safe space for expression, understanding, and validation of feelings. This emotional intimacy creates a sense of security, reducing stress and anxiety. Moreover, the shared joy and happiness in a relationship contribute positively to mental well-being. Celebrating success, sharing laughter, and creating happy memories together can uplift spirits and foster a more positive outlook on life.
Go ahead, sir. You comment on that?
Yeah, that's actually really good. One thing I noticed about my lady, and I was meaning to say this in the last thing we were talking about, is you can tell when somebody's not used to somebody listening or being empathetic when they apologize for crying, right? So anytime she finds herself getting emotional, she'll say, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "What are you apologizing for?" Like this is I'm your space. Like I'm your guy. I've messed up in the past relationships by not being empathetic, but I've practiced that empathy muscle. So, but the more she cries, and the more I tell her, "Hey, you don't have to apologize to express yourself." Now she no longer apologizes for being emotional, and now she feels better. And she was like, she always says, "I feel better now that I was able to do that." Um, so that the whole mental health aspect of that is you being your partner's peace, you being the reason why your partner looks forward to sharing gossip with you or sharing tea with you, sharing their wins with you, because they know it's going to be met with warmth, it's going to be met with happiness, it's going to be met with applause and appreciation, versus them being scared to share something with you out of the fear that you're either going to reject them, you're going to abandon them, you're going to withdraw from them, or do something of the latter. So that whole mental health piece is so amazing. I think that I'm able to operate in my greatness at the office and when I go do my men's retreats and all this kind of stuff because I have a solid foundation with my woman. I don't have anything that's stressing me out where we're not arguing about things. We're not just pissed off about things. Because I remember my last relationship, anytime we weren't good, nothing in my life was good. I can't really be fully present on what I want to do because I'm operating out of anger. I can't really focus on schoolwork because I'm operating out of, I should have said this, or I'm having this internal battle with myself about all the things I wish I would have said, all the ways I wish I could have cussed her out. And it just doesn't work well. And then you find yourself, when you're in conflict all the time with a specific person, you find yourself not wanting to talk to them. And you find a way to isolate yourself to recoup versus coming together to recoup. And the last thing I'm going to say, we talked about this in our live stream the other day. Conflict is the fastest way to connection. And the reason I say that is because it gives you an opportunity to see what your partner needs and to respond to those needs, and the same thing for your partner. But for couples that don't work, conflict is the fastest way to disconnection. And it's a whole different ballgame, and that leads to a bad mental health or bad mental state. So I just wanted to add that.
I think there's one word that determines which direction conflict pushes you. If you look at conflict resolution, as opposed to just conflict, just getting something off my chest. The resolution side, saying that I know we have this issue, how do we resolve it? As opposed to, I know we have this issue, I'm gonna hold out to see which one breaks. So yeah, you have that. Go ahead.
That's a solution-focused approach. If I'm always looking for the resolution without understanding the content and understanding the feelings, it's going to be hard to get to resolution. And you'll be racing to the resolution before you understand the content and the feelings. So if I, first, understand the content. Second, understand the feelings. Third, you validate the feelings, validate the content. And fourth, you respond to the feelings and you respond to the content. Fifth, you look for a solution.
Well, let me ask you a question. That is the equation for resolution, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, that's where you start. So in other words, what I'm saying, I said the same thing, but my sentence my sentence was a bit shorter. So I'm glad you said that because again, in conflict resolution, you can't resolve what you don't understand.
Right.
You cannot resolve what you don't perceive as a real issue. So if I minimize the issue or I don't understand the issue, you'll never come to the correct resolution. Yeah. You'll never come to resolve. So know this going forward, and I'm glad you brought that out because again, the listening audience need to hear that. Know this, that when we talk about resolution going forward, we're talking about the process to get to the point to resolve the issue, which are these first 4 steps.
Yeah.
And then the 5th step.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think the one thing is, as men, one thing we got to be cognizant of is sometimes the solution isn't actually something that we need to act on at all. Sometimes the solution is to just sit there and listen. Sometimes the solution is for that person to get it off their chest. Sometimes the solution is just to be present, to give a hug, to just hold them. And oftentimes we want to solve other people's problems. We're going to solve our partner's problems. And that's not always what they're looking for. And my father was the one who really taught that to me, because growing up, I always wanted to go back and forth. I talked a lot. Like, I was talk a lot now. Y'all know this.
No, you good, man.
But,
That's, we want to talk.
Yeah, but my pops told me one day, he said, son, one thing you'll learn one day is a woman doesn't always want your advice. She don't always want your solution. Sometimes
imagine
you just
that.
need to listen, right? And it took me until about a year ago before I really got to the point to where I realized that that actually worked, because I got tired of trying it my way, always thinking, bro, okay, well, if I just say it this way, or if I just say it long enough, or adjust this approach, until one day I had heard it enough for the last time. She said something that just triggered me back to childhood, and it really hurt my feelings, but it was what I needed. She was like, Miles, just because you got an answer don't mean I need to hear your answer.
Wow.
And I'm like, what you mean? Because I defined myself as a man as being able to figure out the problem. Like, figure out what the problem is, fix it. That was resolution for me. And my expanded, my exposure hadn't shown me that there was another option. And when I tried it and I started realizing it, what I ended up starting to do, and this is my advice for any man out there, if you are very solution focused and you constantly run into this, and sometimes your lady tells you you're trying to fix the problem and you end up making it worse somehow, ask her this simple question before you do anything. She coming to you about a problem, ask her, are you looking to vent? Or are you looking for my opinion or my solution? And you need to accept whatever way she says. And she gonna tell you the truth. She gonna say, I need some help. Like, I need you to give me some advice on this. Or she's gonna tell you, honestly, I just need to get this off my chest. And whatever it is, that's the solution right there. Throw yourself as a leader into that role and say, all right, Ben, I'm gonna be the best person to vent to ever. I'm gonna sit here, dang, I understand how that feels. And you wear that role, and I promise you, it will lead to her appreciating your opinion, your leadership, your input way more, because when you're giving it, she's able to receive it.
I have to be transparent again.
Okay, be transparent. You got about 6 minutes.
Okay, so this past week, I was venting about something, and he said, can I make a suggestion? And I said no. I said, no, thank you. So I'm thinking, okay, we're good. He gets off the phone. He said he had to handle some business. So I called him back like almost 20 minutes later. I said, well, what happened? Because I always reserve my hour break to talk to him on my lunchtime. And when he didn't call back, he told me, he said, well, you didn't want to take my suggestion, so I didn't want to talk to you anymore. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, and I told him later, I said, I don't care if it was my mom, my girlfriend. I didn't want any suggestions at that time. It wasn't personal. Yeah, it wasn't at all. But I felt like he kind of made it personal by not talking to me and just cutting off communication. So, yeah, I just want to be transparent about that.
Well, but here's the thing with that whole scenario. We go back and forth and we talk, and we have a lot of interaction about certain things. And this is something that she has constantly said to me, and I've always said, hey, if I were this, I would do da-da-da-da. So when I asked her, I said, well, can I give you a suggestion? Now, my definition of suggestion is what? What's your definition of suggestion? Advice. Do you have to take it, yes or no? No, you don't have to take it. So if I tell you, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you some advice that you just need to take. But if I say, can I offer a suggestion? To me, that's the lowest form of interjection into a situation. So I figured at that time when she said no, I'm like, okay, well, I guess nothing else for me to say, because you rejected my suggestion, and that was personal.
That's a personal trigger point then.
Right. In this case, it was. Yeah. In this case,
You got to think about it. What's the worst thing that happens if they don't want to take your suggestion? She does it her way. It doesn't work out. All right, cool. Okay. But what can happen the opposite way is it gets to a point to where communication can't happen when it needs to, because when you do have something good to say, and I'm sure your advice was good advice. This is what, man, let me tell you, this happens so many times. She'll say, no, I don't want no advice. Right? Okay. She will come back a day later, 2 days later. I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Sometimes it's just not in that moment, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It is okay.
That was what, 7 days ago?
Please, yeah, go ahead. I know you got something to say.
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I think sometimes as women, it's just like what Miles mentioned. He poses the question, do you want my advice? Do you want a solution, or would you like to vent? And in some situations, you want to I need to tell some things. I need to speak my mind. And in that moment, maybe your suggestion would be interrupting her flow of being able to share or emote or express what she needed to express. And so instead of taking it as an affront, maybe it would have been a different way to respond. May have been just, okay, she doesn't want to hear it now, but I guarantee, because I know that she respects you as a man, that when she was ready to receive that suggestion, she probably would have been willing to receive that suggestion later down the line. But in that moment, that's not what she needed, and she was hoping that you would honor that request.
All right, y'all. No. Now I'll just say that tune into the Perfect Blend podcast, and we're almost out of time. No, I mean yes, absolutely. Man, I wish we had more time, and obviously we're live streaming. I wish we had more time really to just dig into that, because a part of partnership is growth. And here's my philosophy: every single thing that you go through is not a grounds for destroying each other or termination. It really is a point where, or let me reevaluate this, or let me relook at this thing, because maybe there is this, that, or the other. So I don't ever let anybody push me into a corner to say that nothing can be corrected. Every single thing that we deal with on this planet can be corrected. Whether the correction means you walking away from it and closing that door, or you sit down and work out a solution. Every single thing can be corrected. Like, for instance, the last relationship you were in, you learned so much now that even the bad stuff that you went through in the previous relationship, even the stuff that you said you could have done differently, your fiance now is the beneficiary of what you've learned as a result of that. Right. I mean, and so in other words, just even that bad situation made you a better person for the individual that you're with. So that's how we look at it. So let's go down the line. We got a few minutes left. Let's talk about some takeaways, because you'll know that's how we do it here on the Perfect Blend. Come on, let's some takeaways.
Biggest takeaway is what it always is for me, is to ensure that you are communicating effectively, that you are creating spaces and ensuring that you're being, as much as possible, you're working towards emotional intelligence, because it's important to know and understand your partner in that way. And focus on being the best version of yourself so that you can be the partner that you want to be in the relationship.
I think my thing for today is going to be grace. Grace to me is so important, because if you give it, you'll receive it, especially if you're with the right person. And grace allows us to get growth. Grace allows us to be forgiven. Grace allows us to feel like it's safe enough to not be perfect for this other person, but to work to get better at it every day.
Once again, guys, it's your boy Rex Howard Jr. This is the thing I want to say, and I want to leave everybody with. If you're tuning in and when you're here, the answer is in the question. All the answers are in the question. If you don't have the answer, you got to ask another question. If you don't have clarity, you got to ask another question. If you're unsure, you have to ask another question. So the answer is always in the question. You can never ask enough questions. So in the midst of conflict, if you don't know what to do next, ask another question. And one of the main questions that you can ask is, how would you like for me to show up for you right now? Or what is it that you're needing from me right now? And you ask yourself, if I can't give her or him the things that they are asking for, what's stopping me? You answer that, you can answer everything else. So the answer is always in the question.
My takeaway kind of aligned with Andrea's, just communication and being that safe space for your partner, being open, being empathetic. You're laughing. Wow. I just think those are all intertwined. And one thing that Rex said on the actual radio program, he said, lead with love and end with love.
That is excellent advice. Well, my takeaway is this, is that always be open-minded to growth and never allow anybody to push you into a corner to make you feel bad about the place that you are if you are open to growth. Because all of us are at a point, for instance, if you had seen me, when I first started eating, I was 298 pounds. Now I'm at 260. So somebody would say, man, you still big, right? But you didn't see me when I first started the journey. What do you say, Ma?
You don't know where I came from.
Right, you don't know where I came from. So in the process of partnerships and the process of growth, all of us have a starting point at which we want to turn to become better. Your starting point was learning how not to always make that phone call or pick up that bottle or turn into the, you shared the pornography or me turning to that, because I can be callous and cold. Boom. That shouldn't be my first response. So, but 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I was that times 10. So my takeaway is this: be open to growth, be open to new ideas. Like my daughter shared with me this partnership, or else we wouldn't be here talking about this if I wasn't open. So I want to say thank you for everybody that's tuning in, and I want to say thank you again for this panel, man. I love the chemistry. I think y'all love it too, because like you even said, Miles, you picked the phone and said, this is good, and it really is. But also, the more we talk about this, the more this topic gets a voice, the more we're going to see people's paradigms shift, the paradigm, the shape, the thing taking place. And I'll be honest with you, and I'll say this and I'll close. I really believe we as men have more of a shift to do than the women do. Because as leaders, we have this natural propensity just to lead. Whether you're not going to follow me, okay, that's cool. I'm still going about my business. So I think we have a little bit more to learn in this area as well. So again, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Andrea.
Thank you,
Darnita,
Rex
Miles, and
Miles.
Rex,
Yes.
and Tiki. All right, thank you for tuning in. This has been a great show. Y'all have a good evening.
Good night.
Hold on one second. I think we're still live.